Right, today we're going to try and cure a stiff steering, or in this instance a C steering, on this outboard. It's a common problem where the grease gets wedged up and goes old inside the steering tilt tube, and this one we might have to take the tubes down in order to get the steering cable out, or that big nut there. Hopefully it won't be too big a job. Obviously the steering won't turn, or is very stiff, so this does need doing from time to time on mount outboards. This boat certainly needs a bit of a clean before we take it out. Been left out for winter. Right, the first way I do it is to hit that with a rubber mallet to try and get some movement and freedom up in it. We've achieved some, but nowhere near enough, so we're going to have to strip it down, I'm afraid. So the first job is to connect the steering arm, disconnect the steering arm from the tube connector which moves the outboard inside the thrust tube, which is just take that off with the nut and bolt, save the washers. You'll see that the engine now moves perfectly well, so the stiffness, as I knew, is actually inside the thrust tube. It's corroded and solid grease that does it. The next thing you've got to do is take that nut, undo that nut there, which holds the end of the whole steering cable in, and there's a nut on there which you have to hold captive while you're doing it. This job is never easy, it's always crudded up with stuff. Then this sort of plastic covering nut thing comes off as well, which is guiding and keeping the grease in the tilt tube. Has to come off. On smaller boats, to get this out, you always have difficulty with the distance between there and there on the hull, but of course as it's a rib, I've let the tube down, so we're getting some movement, so let's persevere. So what's her indoor say?
Sun's come out.
Sun's come out. So we're gradually getting that out of that tilt tube by putting a bolt or something smaller diameter in and hitting it. That will gradually come out. It's starting to free now, which is good. It was quite solid. So there it is out. Her indoors has got some grease on the tube, so she's in trouble. And that's the tilt tube. It's now got to be reamed out both ends. I'll show you what I used for that. But that came out a little bit better than I thought, with the aid of an old drill bit that I use for knocking down the hole. Right, to ream out and clean out the inside of this thrust tube, I use these wire brushes which I got off Amazon. I can't remember what size they are, unfortunately, but you'll have to check out your thrust tube size and get one a little bit bigger. I'm going to cover the tubes with some cloths and wear some glasses just in case these little brushes throw some bits of metal. We go with the wire brush, have to coat the both ends. Right, I've put the new brush in now, and you can see all the crap. Let's get that thrust tube. Okay. I keep calling that a thrust tube. It's a tilt tube, of course. And there it is. I don't know if the camera can see down it, but that's what you got to try and clean out with that wire brush, because that whole rod has got to slide in and out there, so it's quite a task, but once you've done it, it usually lasts a while. The last job is to just blow out down the other side of this coming out that any dust from the tilt tube. Coming out.
Can't see any.
Stop it. The next job is to feed that into that tilt tube. Another good thing to do, if you've got yourself a long bottle brush, something like this, put that in just to get the final dust out, which I think that's just done. Now, opinion is divided what you lube this tilt tube with. Whatever you do, don't use a thick grease. I've just used a spray WD-40 white lithium grease, but it's the grease that clags it up. So you need a little bit, but not too much. Now just put the cable back into the tilt tube. Put this nut back on. We'll have a little bit of grease on that. White lithium again, nothing too heavy. Be good if the spanner fit. There's my big adjustable. I love working on the engines one-handed. Tighten that mat up. You get the idea. Tighten that up. Then you've got to put the end on here, and Bob should be your uncle and Fanny your aunt. We'll test it afterwards. Indoors will now demonstrate how the steering's going. All way one way, now all the way other way, relatively easy, and then straighten her up. Keep going. Whoop, that'll do. Right, jobbed. How to ease a stiff steering on virtually any outboard motor. What do you reckon, indoors? Shikwy. One of the other things, if you do use the grease nipples that are usually at the front of the engine to lubricate this whole thing, make sure that that is all the way in when you lubricate it, not all the way out, because that way the inner and the outer of that cable doesn't get stuffed full of grease. So if you lubricate that, turned all the way into there. Thanks for watching.